This is Eye on Africa, France 24's program focused on the continent. Here's what's coming up on this edition. A stunning jump in South Africa's death toll from the ongoing unrest. Nearly 100 more people reported dead. President Ramaphosa says he was not prepared for the violence. France 24 takes you inside the fight over Ethiopia's southern and western Tigray region, with Tigrayans fleeing the Amhara see a chance to take back what they claim as their land. And having never seen cycling until the age of 14, South African Songezo Jim is now at the top of the sport. He joins us live to share his inspiring story. Rioting in South Africa has now claimed 212 lives. That according to the government on Friday. The number marks a sharp rise from the 117 reported dead just the day before. Most of the fatalities were in the southeastern province of KwaZulu-Natal. That's where most of the unrest has taken place, as well as in Gauteng province. Riots and looting began a week ago in response to the jailing of former President Jacob Zuma, but evolved into an expression of anger over poverty and inequality. President Cyril Ramaphosa addressed the nation earlier this evening and admitted his government failed to spot this risk.
I intended to cripple the economy of our country, to cause social instability, and severely weaken or even dislodge the democratic state. Using the pretext of a political grievance, those behind these acts have sought to provoke a popular insurrection amongst our people. As this government, we must acknowledge that we were poorly prepared for an orchestrated campaign of public violence, destruction, and sabotage of this nature.
And for more on this story, we're joined by Trailblazing from Johannesburg. He is an associate professor of politics at Wits University. Thank you so much for joining us here on France 24. Now, much of the violence, recent violence, has taken place in and around Johannesburg. Things do appear to be calmer there today, but how does it feel there right now?
Well, a couple of days ago, we were very alarmed in Johannesburg because the unrest that originated in the province of KwaZulu-Natal spread to Gauteng province, where we are now located. Our local shopping centres closed in anticipation of possible riots. But what happened up here in Johannesburg was nothing compared to what happened in Durban and the surrounding province of KwaZulu-Natal. That was the epicenter of this unrest. There are parts of Durban and parts of KwaZulu-Natal even now where people are struggling to get basic supplies and where there's food insecurity. So, yes, the situation is still very tense in the country. The government has talked about the situation having stabilized, but it has not stabilized entirely. There are still incidents. None of us ever thought anything on this scale could happen, or very few people anticipated it, except a few in hindsight. In hindsight, we can look at all the unemployment and poverty in the country exacerbated by the COVID epidemic. We can look at the grievances around the arrest and imprisonment of Zuma amongst his supporters who are concentrated in KwaZulu-Natal. But it's only in retrospect that we can, as it were, begin to piece together what happened. In advance, no one anticipated that something on this scale could conceivably happen in South Africa. We've never seen something like it before. It's quite unprecedented.
I'd like to get your response to the president's words tonight. Do you think that he said anything that the South African people, especially those who are dealing with poverty and inequality on a grand scale, anything they wanted to hear that would help?
Well, on the one hand, I think that President Ramaphosa is a very assured and reassuring figure. I think he comes across quite well on television. Many members of the public will take some comfort from both the calmness of his tone and the firmness of his commitment to for example, hold those responsible for this unrest to account. But there's a grumbling and dissatisfaction in the country that we've heard Cyril Ramaphosa talk like this before. Some of his speeches are better than others. He's quite good at this sort of talk. But, there have been major policy failures on his watch, for example, with the vaccination rollout and the unemployment and poverty that were already endemic in South Africa have grown so much worse as a result of the COVID crisis. Some people consider the government's social and economic response to the crisis to be inadequate in terms of providing for people's basic needs. So there's a lot of underlying dissatisfaction, but I still think there was overwhelming outrage amongst most parts of the public at what these looters did and what the criminal syndicates and the political plotters behind this riot were trying to do. There's overwhelming outrage at that. So I think there will be a desire on the part of many to rally around the government, a desire to see it take a firmer stand in defense of South African constitutional democracy.
Trailblazing from Wits University in Johannesburg, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on France 24. Next, the latest on the conflict in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region. The battle there widening, with 3 more regions sending soldiers to reinforce the national army in its fight against rebels. A 4th region, Amhara, has been locked in conflict with Tigrayan rebels since the war erupted in November. Both sides claim the fields of western and southern Tigray as their own. Hundreds of thousands of Tigrayans have since fled Amhara, creating a humanitarian crisis. France 24 spoke to Amharas who are determined to stay.
These men from the Amhara region are ready to risk their lives to defend the territories retaken in Tigray and fight the TPLF forces. The Fano are a non-governmental militia mobilizing citizens when a crisis occurs. During the conflict opposing the TPLF and the Ethiopian government, Amhara forces have retaken territories in Tigray such as Wolkait. The offensive has displaced hundreds of thousands of Tigrayans. Amharas say they've been chased from these lands 30 years ago. Tesfu is one of them. He's leaving the city of Gondar to establish himself in Humera, his birthplace. He recovered 100 hectares of land and has already set up his home there. Thousands of Amhara have resettled to Wolkait, but these areas could become a battlefield again. After their military victories, TPLF forces said they want to reconquer these territories. But in the town of Dansha, this member of the local administration assures that this time the Amhara won't leave. The unilateral ceasefire declared by the government at the end of June was short-lived. The army has been redeployed to counter the TPLF. The number of civilian victims, meanwhile, continues to grow. Massacres are attributed to all parties, but each claim their right to vengeance.
Let's take a quick look now at some other stories making headlines across the continent. The United States shipping 25 million COVID-19 vaccine doses to Africa, starting with Burkina Faso, Djibouti, and Ethiopia. The first deliveries will go out in days. The surge in doses being coordinated with the African Union and Global COVAX program. Mozambique has officially requested military help from neighboring countries to help stop a jihadist insurgency in the north. Insurgents linked to the Islamic State group have been wreaking havoc in the gas-rich area since 2017. But the violence has surged in the last year, raising concerns it could spread across the border. And 100 days after his kidnapping in Mali, a rally was held in support of French journalist Olivier Dubois in Paris. Representatives from Reporters Without Borders, local officials, and Dubois' media colleagues gathered to raise awareness. He was captured by a jihadist group with links to al-Qaeda and is the only known French hostage in the world. In 1994, Rwanda was the site of an unthinkable massacre. More than 800,000 Rwandans, mainly ethnic Tutsis, were slaughtered by the Hutu majority. In the face of that genocide, some Hutus tried to intervene and were executed because of it. But others lived to tell the tale. In this report, the righteous of Rwanda, Luc Lagumbouche and Josh Vardy, focus on those who risked their lives. Here's an excerpt.
In April 1994, this young Tutsi came to spend the holidays on his uncle's farm in Kibuye, on the shores of Lake Kivu. When the first killing started, the local prefect asked Tutsis to assemble in designated places, supposedly to guarantee their safety.
People took refuge in the church, especially Christians like my uncle's family. They said to themselves, "We may as well die in the house of God." Others went to the stadium just as the authorities had encouraged them to do in order to protect them. But in reality, it was just a ruse to get them together and annihilate them more quickly using heavy weapons.
The prefect had in fact ordered soldiers, militiamen, and ordinary citizens to assassinate the Tutsis. Josephine is a Hutu. This married bar owner and mother of 7 children was present at the massacre of more than 10,000 Tutsis.
We heard the crackle of weapons coming from the stadium just behind us. The screams could be heard ringing all around us. They massacred a lot of people at the stadium. Then they went to the church to kill people there. Those who were able to escape ran away and hid in the bush. They were hunted down and killed there. Others made it to the lake. The killers were enthusiastic, motivated. It was as if they'd found something good in killing. They were well equipped for it. They were ready for anything. They were no longer men. They'd become hyenas.
Thomas's uncle and family gathered in the church were all killed. But the young boy who had stayed back on the farm escaped the carnage. He hid in order to avoid the gangs of killers who were hunting down survivors.
I slept there among those shrubs. I was looking for the best place. I thought if I went to that big bush up there, I would have a better chance of surviving. If only for one more day. I walked around this whole area that you see here. I was completely desperate.
He was in a bad shape. It was difficult to recognize that he was a human being. His eyes looked broken. He was completely disorientated. His clothes were ragged. In short, it wasn't a pretty sight. I said to him, "Come over here. If people see you, they'll kill you. Get out of there and come with me."
A lady came out of her house and saw me up there. She called to me and I thought, I've got nothing more to lose. Even if I risk dying, I might as well go. In life, you have to take risks. What happened next could have led to life or to death. I decided to follow her.
Between the Tour de France currently underway and the Olympics starting next week, the sport of cycling is having a moment in the sun. And today we're speaking to a trailblazer in the sport on the African continent, Songezo Jim. He was the first black South African to participate at the sport's elite division on the International Cycling Union's World Tour. And Songezo joins us now from Cape Town. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. I want to start with your journey into elite cycling. It started after a sort of love at first sight moment. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, thanks for having me in the show, first of all. Yeah, indeed, actually, it started at the love at first sight, because I started cycling in 2005. That's when I moved to Cape Town, So it was, and for me back then, I didn't even know anything about cycling. And when I saw it, I just fell in love with the sport, and I wanted to join the sport. And then I took it from there.
There's this idea that to be a top athlete, you need to start when you're very young and really concentrate on that. But when you first saw a cycling group going through past your neighborhood, I mean, you couldn't even ride a bike. So how do you go from that to competing at the top levels?
Yeah, when I started, I was 14 years old. And then I couldn't even know how to ride a bicycle. So they had to teach me in the academy how to ride a bicycle. And then I took it step by step from there, to the highest level of cycling. And it was actually quite a massive challenge. And challenge is something that I actually enjoy. I enjoy being challenged all the time. And it was actually a lot of hard work into it from 2009 and going to France in 2008 to visit Team CSC, and from there it was actually an eye opener for me, and that's when I said I want to become a professional cyclist in Europe. And fast forward to 2013, that's when I turned professional with MTN Quebec, and then I moved to Italy. I used to live in Italy. I moved to Italy in Lucca, and it required a lot of work, because you come from South Africa with a totally different kind of weather as well, and the racing system at the same time, the distances and everything that comes to play as well. So it was a massive challenge for me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right, because obviously you have to have the skills to compete on the international level, but I imagine that you experienced some challenges with practicing and potentially as a South African rider also facing, racism in a very white sport. Yeah,
that's true. Actually, cycling is a white dominant sport. And but at the same time, when you're there in a race, it doesn't really matter if you're green or black or whatever. We're here to do our job, which is to try and win a race or do the job for the team. So, and for me, I always took that, and that gave me a drive inside me to want to do better each and every day, And, coming from South Africa in South Africa, we do 95-kilometer races, 100-kilometer races, And then you go to Europe, like, for example, I did Milan-San Remo in 2013. That's like 300-kilometer race. So you need to be able to bridge that bridge, and that takes, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a while in order for you to be able to do that, and that needs a lot of work. And of course, with the downhills as well in Europe, we do outdoors, all those crazy long downhills and stuff like that, which is in South Africa, we don't have those kind of stuff. So you need to improve in those skills each and every day. It's something you definitely need to work on. That's why, like you said, it's much better to go to Europe at a younger age. You can be able to learn those skills earlier.
I want to make sure we talk about your charity, Songezo Cycling Academy, because you're really paying your own experience forward by introducing kids to cycling and providing competition opportunities. But you're really giving them more than just a bike. What makes you proudest when you see these kids?
Actually, when I started cycling in Maspumelele as well. And the academy that I was with, it actually faded there, So when I came back, and I see, the kids there around the streets smoking and everything, and they see me riding bikes and they want to join the cycling. And I decided to open the academy, for first reason, actually, was just to be able to take the kids away from the streets whereby they don't get involved into drugs and all this kind of stuff, so they can be busy. And at the same time, I'm also introducing them into the sport of cycling, which is great. So the Songezo Cycling Academy, I started it in 2015. So it's been running and it's been actually progressing, and we have a great supporters, which is from London Buffalo Foundation. They're doing fantastic job supporting us there. And for this program, actually, it's riding and education, because you have to try and balance the two going forward, because as an athlete, you only have so much time as a sports person. And then there's actually a life after sport, So we're trying, and also at the end of the day, not all these kids, they're going to become professional cyclists. So we actually have to give them more opportunities in life and actually equip them, so to make sure that they can take those skills forward.
South African cyclist Songezo Jim, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks.
And that's all for this edition of Eye on Africa, but stay with us. More news up next.